Open this door right now, or I'm breaking it down. We received a call about a disturbance. You need to step outside. This is your last warning. Man, open the door right now, or you are going to be arrested.
She didn't open the door. That decision, made in the dark in pajamas with her 16-year-old daughter asleep 10 feet away, would send Officer Derek Paulson to prison for 22 years and cost his department $620,000. But here's what nobody knew. That night, Paulson wasn't there because of a disturbance call. And Simone Carter wasn't just any attorney. Before we go further, where are you watching from tonight? Drop your state in the comments. Stories like this one don't make the evening news. That's exactly why this channel exists. Simone Carter had spent 18 years doing one thing, making sure the law meant what it said. Not in a courtroom theater way. In a 31 wins out of 34 cases way, every single one of them a civil rights violation. Every single one of them filed against people who assumed the law bent in their direction. She had argued Fourth Amendment cases before federal judges. She had deposed police chiefs. She had won settlements that forced entire departments to rewrite their procedures from scratch. She was 45 years old and a single mother, and she was very, very good at her job. The irony, the kind you only see clearly in hindsight, is that Paulson had no idea who was standing on the other side of that door. That Wednesday had been a long one. Simone had been in a deposition hearing since 2 p.m. 9 hours. She got home at 11:20 p.m., took the elevator to the third floor, walked down a quiet hallway, and locked her door behind her. No noise. No neighbors out. Nothing unusual. 25 minutes later, the pounding started. Officer Derek Paulson had been with the department for 9 years. 4 internal complaints in 3 years, none of them resulting in formal discipline. He was used to doors opening when he knocked. He was also not assigned to this neighborhood that night. That detail would matter more than he could possibly imagine. Simone didn't move toward the door. She stood in the hallway of her apartment, lights still off, and listened. The pounding had stopped. Paulson was waiting. She could hear him breathing on the other side. She spoke clearly, loud enough for her phone to catch every word. "Officer, I'm not opening this door until you identify yourself properly and explain the legal basis for this contact. Under the Fourth Amendment, I have the right to be secure in my home. What is your name and badge number?" Silence. Not radio silence, not thinking silence. The silence of someone who didn't expect that question. He had no answer. Simone moved fast, not panicked, precise. She pulled up the Ring app on her phone. The live feed loaded in seconds. Paulson standing in the hallway, full uniform, weight forward, one hand hovering near his belt. The timestamp read 11:47 p.m. The camera was recording everything. She switched to her texts. One message to Marcus, her neighbor directly across the hall, a real estate attorney, 50 years old, a light sleeper. "Police at my door, aggressive, no explanation. Awake 3 seconds. Awake, I can hear him. My Ring cam is recording too. Different angle. You okay?" 2 cameras, 2 attorneys, 1 hallway. Paulson didn't know any of that. Sorry. Quick question before we go further. If that were your door, your hallway, your kid asleep in the next room, would you have opened it? Type yes or no in the comments. Keep watching. Paulson's voice came back. Different now. Quieter. Harder. "Ma'am, if you don't open this door, I'm going to assume you're destroying evidence. You have 5 seconds. Destroying evidence. Of what? She had been asleep 40 minutes ago. 5. Simone was already dialing. 4. 911. 2 rings. 3. 911. What's your emergency? 2. This is Simone Carter. I'm at the Meridian Apartments 3rd floor apartment 312. There is a police officer at my door threatening to force entry. He claims there was a disturbance call. He has refused to give his badge number. I need you to verify whether any call was placed to this address tonight." 1. The pounding stopped. He heard her on the phone. Through the door, she could hear the shift, his weight moving back, his radio crackling. She didn't move. The dispatcher's voice was calm but careful. Ma'am, can you hold for just one moment? 30 seconds, maybe 40. Simone kept her phone to her ear and her eyes on the ring feed. Paulson was still in the hallway. Not leaving, not knocking, just standing there. The dispatcher came back. Ma'am, I'm not showing any calls for service to your address tonight. No disturbance call, no wellness check, nothing. No call, no call at all. That changed everything. I need a supervisor, Simone said. Flat, no hesitation. I'm connecting you now. While she waited, she looked at the ring feed again. Paulson's hand had dropped from his belt. His posture had shifted. The weight that had been leaning forward was pulling back now. Something in him had changed the moment he heard her on the phone. He knew she was documenting. He knew dispatch had no record. And now a supervisor was about to ask why a patrol officer was standing outside an apartment in a zone he wasn't assigned to at 11:49 p.m., threatening a resident who had done nothing wrong. He had walked into a building full of cameras with a story that didn't exist. The trap wasn't set by Simone. Paulson built it himself, one thread at a time, and he was standing right in the middle of it. Paulson heard her say supervisor. He knew. Sergeant Williams came on the line. Calm voice, deliberate. He asked Simone to describe the officer, the uniform, the badge. She did methodically the way someone trained in evidence documentation describes a scene. Williams went quiet for a moment. Then, ma'am, I need you to stay inside. Do not open that door for anyone until I'm personally standing in front of your peephole with my badge up. Is something wrong? Officer Paulson is not assigned to your district tonight. He has no authorized reason to be in that building. Simone looked at the ring feed. Paulson's head turned slightly. His radio was close to his ear. He had heard enough. He walked away. Fast. Not running, but fast. She watched him move down the hallway on the small screen, full uniform badge, catching the light disappearing around the corner, like a man who had just realized exactly what he had done. He didn't look back. A door opened behind Simone. Her daughter stood in the frame of her bedroom door, 16 years old, hair still pressed flat from sleep, squinting at the light from her mother's phone. Mom, her voice small, what's happening? Simone turned. She crossed the room in 4 steps. She put one hand on her daughter's shoulder and kept her voice completely level. Go back inside, baby. Lock your door. I'll come get you in 10 minutes. Her daughter looked at her for a moment, reading her face the way kids read parents when they know something is wrong, but trust the calm being offered. She went back inside. The lock clicked. Simone stood in the dark hallway of her apartment and exhaled once. Then she went back to her phone. 6 minutes later, 3 patrol cars were in the parking lot. Sergeant Williams knocked the way Paulson never had, 2 measured taps, then his voice steady and clear. Miss Carter, Sergeant Williams, badge is up at the peephole. She looked. 4 officers, name tags visible. Williams holding his badge flat against the lens. She opened the door. Williams was in his 50s. He looked at Simone, still in the clothes she had come home in, phone in hand, daughter's door closed behind her, and his expression didn't perform sympathy. It acknowledged a situation. Walk me through it from the beginning. She did. Every word, every timestamp. She opened the Ring app and showed him the footage. Paulson at the door posture, forward hand near his belt face completely visible from the moment he arrived. She played the audio recording. She showed him the text exchange with Marcus. As if on cue, Marcus's door opened across the hall. He stepped out in a sweatshirt, phone extended. I've got it from this angle. Audio and video, different camera, different position. He never properly identified himself. I was home all evening. This hallway was silent until he started. Williams looked at the footage from both cameras. He didn't say anything for a long moment. Then he took both their contact information and told them someone would be in touch within 24 hours. 3 sources, 3 Independent recordings, one hallway, zero legitimate reason for Paulson to be there. The case was already building itself. What Simone didn't know, what Williams didn't tell her that night, was that Derek Paulson had been under quiet internal review for 6 months. 3 women had filed anonymous complaints. 3 women who lived alone. 3 late-night visits with the same pattern: a knock after 11 p.m. A claim about a disturbance call, pressure to open the door, no dispatch record of any call placed to their address. All 3 had been too frightened to go on record. Internal Affairs had the complaints. They had the pattern. They had a short list of names. They didn't have evidence. Not the kind that holds in court. Not a face on camera. Not audio. Not a 911 call proving no legitimate reason existed. Not a witness across the hall with a second angle. Until tonight. Paulson had spent 6 months operating in what he believed were blind spots, buildings without doormen, women without loud networks, situations where his word was the only word. He had walked into a building with 2 lawyers and 4 cameras and threatened the wrong door. He'd done this before. Tonight was the first time he got caught. The warrant came through 48 hours after Simone's 911 call. Paulson's patrol car computer, his personal phone, his home laptop, all of it. What investigators found wasn't a mistake. It wasn't a one-time lapse in judgment. It was a system. For at least 2 years, Paulson had been running searches in the department's law enforcement database. Not for active cases, not for suspects, for addresses. Specifically residential units with single female occupants. No roommates, no male names on the lease. Buildings without 24-hour doormen. Apartments on upper floors with limited foot traffic. After 10 p.m., he had compiled a list. Investigators found records of visits to dozens of addresses, all off-duty, all late at night, all logged under fabricated patrol notes that didn't match his assigned routes. 23 addresses in the first year, 31 in the second. He had been doing this longer than anyone realized. The database searches alone were enough to end his career. They were not enough to account for everything they found next. His phone contained photographs, women through windows, building entrances, handwritten notes about schedules, what time lights went off, which nights cars were absent from parking spots. He had treated the police database like a personal directory. He had treated the badge like a key. 2 of the 3 women who had filed anonymous complaints 6 months earlier called the department within 72 hours of Paulson's arrest becoming public. They had seen the news. They recognized the name. They agreed to make formal statements. Their accounts matched in every structural detail. The late-night knock, the disturbance claim, the pressure to open the door, the absence of any dispatch record. 2 of them had opened their doors. What happened next was in their statements. Paulson was arrested on a Monday morning and at his home. The charges: 3 counts of felony stalking, 2 counts of criminal trespass with intent, 2 counts of sexual assault in the 2nd degree, multiple counts of official misconduct, and unlawful use of a law enforcement database. He had 9 years on the force. He had 4 unresolved internal complaints. He had a list of 54 addresses on a device he carried in his own home. The trial lasted 11 days. The jury deliberated for 6 hours, guilty on all counts. The judge sentenced Derek Paulson to 22 years. No possibility of parole for the first 15. He was 39 years old. Simone filed the civil suit the same week the criminal verdict came in. 64 pages, filed in federal court. The argument was not complicated. The department had received documented complaints about Paulson's pattern of behavior 6 months before he appeared at Simone's door. They had done 4 internal reviews. None resulted in formal discipline. None resulted in restricted database access. None resulted in supervised patrol. He had continued, uninterrupted. The city contested it. Their position: they had been investigating. They had followed procedure. They had acted in good faith. Simone's attorney pulled the internal review logs. She pulled the database access records, showing Paulson's searches had continued and increased during the 6 months he was supposedly under review. She pulled the department's own written policy on handling misconduct allegations, and she put it next to what had actually been done. The jury took 4 hours. 620,000 dollari. Simone won on every count. She kept $45,000 legal expenses, time away from her practice during the trial documented costs. The remainder, $575,000. $210,000 went to a local organization providing free legal representation to assault survivors filing civil rights claims. $185,000 went to a women's safety nonprofit funding security systems and emergency relocation assistance. $180,000 established a grant program covering doorbell cameras and home security equipment for women living alone in high-density residential buildings. She didn't hold a press conference. She issued one written statement, 3 sentences long, and went back to work. A man with a badge used a law enforcement database to build a target list of women living alone for 2 years before one closed door and one camera ended it. 22 years. I'll let you decide whether that fits what he did. Drop your answer in the comments. I'm genuinely asking because the people in this story deserve more than silence. The judge's order wasn't a suggestion. The Seattle Police Department was required to implement 4 specific reforms within 90 days of the civil verdict. First, an automatic flag system in the law enforcement database. Any officer running personal information searches without an active case number attached would trigger an immediate supervisory review. No exceptions, no overrides at the patrol level. Second, body cameras became mandatory for every form of public contact, including wellness checks, noise complaints, and informal door knocks. The category of informal contact, the procedural gap Paulson had used for 2 years, was formally closed. Third, all misconduct complaints involving residential contact had to be reviewed by a supervisor outside the officer's direct chain of command within 72 hours of filing. Anonymous complaints were no longer allowed to sit in a queue. Fourth, the department issued a written acknowledgement that its existing review process had failed to protect the public during the 6 months Paulson remained on active patrol after the first complaints were filed. That acknowledgement, 3 paragraphs long, was read into the public record. It will stay there. Simone Carter still practices law. She took 2 weeks off after the criminal trial ended, the first real break she had taken in 4 years. Then she went back. She still argues Fourth Amendment cases. She still files civil rights suits against departments that assume procedure is optional. Her record is now 38 wins out of 42 cases. She also teaches. 1 evening course per semester at the law school documentation evidence chain and constitutional protections during police contact. Not theory, application. She shows her students the ring cam footage from that night. She plays the audio recording. She walks them through every decision she made and why. She tells them the same thing at the end of every class: you don't have to be an attorney to protect yourself. You have to know what you're entitled to, and you have to document it. Her daughter turns 18 next spring. She has already been accepted to 2 universities. She is studying pre-law. She doesn't talk much about that night, but her mother noticed something after the trial ended. Her daughter started paying attention differently to news stories, to verdicts, to the language people use when they talk about rights they assume they have versus rights they can actually prove they have. That shift doesn't have a name, but it's real. And it will outlast everything else in this story. Marcus still lives across the hall. He upgraded his doorbell camera 3 months after the incident. Wider angle, extended storage motion, sensitivity turned up. He jokes that he's the building's unofficial security director. Simone points out that she's the one with the federal case record. The Meridian Apartments sent a letter to every resident after the civil verdict. It included a recommendation to install doorbell cameras and a summary of residents' legal rights during police contact. The building partnered with a security company to offer discounted installation. Within 60 days, 34 of the 40 units had cameras in place. 1 incident, 1 hallway, 34 cameras. Derek Paulson is currently incarcerated at a state correctional facility. He has filed 2 appeals. Both were denied. He will be eligible for parole consideration when he is 54 years old. Given the nature of the convictions and the documented pattern of conduct, his likelihood of early release is not considered high by anyone familiar with the case. One closed door, one camera, one attorney who knew the law. That was enough. The 3 women who filed anonymous complaints 6 months before Simone's door got knocked on, they had no camera. They had no neighbor with a law degree across the hall. 2 of them had opened their doors. Their stories are darker, and that's the next video. If you watch this all the way through, you already know why it matters. Not because it's dramatic, because it's real, and because the thing that stopped it was something anyone can have. Share this with someone who lives alone. Share it with someone who thinks they just opened the door. Share it with someone who doesn't know they're allowed to ask for a badge number before they do anything else. This channel exists because stories like this don't make the evening news, and the people in them deserve more than a headline. Subscribe if you want to be here for the next one. Justice doesn't trend on its own. We make it trend.